propaganda. I mean, it goes well beyond spin. It's flat-out propaganda. Yes, there was a link to Romney and Bain Capital. The man used to run it. Yes, there was a link between Bain Capital and the factory that this gentleman worked at. And yes, there was a link between the factory being closed down and this guy losing his job. But if I recall correctly, I think that she even got sick before he lost his job. So she actually was receiving treatment ahead of time or something along those lines. I don't remember that. I might be confusing that with something else. But I know at either rate, Romney had nothing to do with it, period. The next point, raising taxes on the middle class. The occupier promised not to raise taxes on the middle class time and time again. However, the latest fiscal cliff deal hiked the payroll tax by 2%, which accounted for $125 billion of the $190 billion in total tax hikes. Now, to me, that's kind of a red herring. I don't want to give Barack a break. I don't like the occupier's politics. I don't like his policies. And the man does not belong in the White House. This last election was fraudulent and was stolen. There's no question. Anyone who looks at the numbers with a rational point of view cannot come to a different conclusion. The fix was in. But as much as the Bain Capital was responsible for this woman's death by cancer from the previous point, the payroll tax bit was only a temporary holiday anyway. It wasn't so much a tax hike as it was an allowance for it to return to its previous level. Yeah, people got used to not having it. And it was the Democrats who fought long and hard on this. Why? Because they honestly thought the Republicans would stand up and stop this. They thought they would have been willing to filibuster it. And then the Democrats could pounce on them, because this is all part of the party politics that goes on, where it's not about helping the people. It's not about doing the business of running the country. It's about whose party's in charge. You picked the wrong team. Nah, boo-boo. Even though there's probably about a half an eyelash difference between 90% of the people currently serving in Washington. The Dems thought the Republicans would filibuster and stop it in the first place. Why? Because this particular payroll tax that we keep talking about is the primary source of funds for Medicare, which, by the way, is already in trouble and needs additional help. Do you think you did Medicare and their Social Security, either one, any favors by reducing the primary way of paying for this? It's insane. Nobody in their right mind should have allowed this to happen. But yes, you could say that that particular tax increase hit a large portion of middle to lower class working folks. There's no doubt. I've seen a difference. I'm feeling it. It's crazy how quickly you get used to having that money when you have it for a few months. But I don't know so much that you really can hammer away too much on this particular point, because, again, the fiscal cliff deal was bad from start to finish. Should have never happened. Another place where the Republicans should have stood their ground, stood on principles, and got their message out to the American people instead of continuing to let the left and the mainstream media define the discussion. As long as you keep doing that and keep letting these so-called progressives redefine what things mean every time it's necessary for them to get people to believe they're really trying to help them. One of the biggies, keeping your health care. I'm sure everybody remembers in 2009 when the occupier confidently stated, if you like your health care plan, you can keep it. Well, turns out as a result of Obamacare, the nonpartisan CBO, Congressional Budget Office, for those of you who don't get the initials, estimates that 7 million fewer people will have employment-based health insurance. Obamacare negotiations on TV. As you'll recall, the occupier promised we'll have the negotiations televised on C-SPAN. Well, yeah, obviously that didn't happen. Raising the debt ceiling. Now, this one actually is a very big one. This is a huge hypocrisy for the anointed one, for the occupier. Because in 2006, then Senator Obama said, quote, "The fact that we're here today to debate raising America's debt limit is a sign of leadership failure. It is a sign that the U.S. government can't pay its own bills." However, in 2013, he said, quote, "To even entertain the idea of not raising the debt ceiling, it's absurd." How about reducing the deficit? In 2009, the occupier promised that he would cut the deficit that he inherited by half by the end of his first term. However, each year of Obama's first term was marked by at least a $1 trillion deficit. So, instead of cutting it in half, he's almost tripled it at this point, more than doubled it in that same 4 years, and has increased the deficit by more than all the previous presidents put together. And the guy still gets to go out and play golf on President's Day with Tiger Woods. What's up with that? I remember in the campaign he criticized Bush for taking so much time off. This man's done nothing but take time off, for crying out loud. Now there's some hypocrisy for you. Avoiding the sequester. Ooh, here's a recent hot topic. In 2011, the occupier said, "I will veto any effort to get rid of those automatic spending cuts." Really? Now, in 2013, the occupier is saying, "These cuts are not smart. They are not fair. They will add hundreds of thousands of people to unemployment rolls." FYI, the House has voted to replace Obama's sequester twice. Harry Reid on the Senate hasn't allowed those measures to even get a vote. Why is that important? Because just like almost every other piece of obstructionism that the Congress has faced in the last 3-4 years or so, not saying there's a particular pattern, but actually, I guess it's probably about 2 to 3 years now. A lot of blame keeps being put on the side of the aisle while all the folks with an R at the end of their name set. But time and time again, in the House of Representatives, since they've taken control there, they have voted repetitively to approve budgets. They never get passed in the Senate, however, to move forward with an end to sequestration. Dozens of other things that have been attempted by the House Republicans in order to get the financial house in order to avoid this type of mandatory emergency manufactured crisis bullcrap that we keep facing over and over again. At some point, we've got to put an end to it. But what happens? The Republicans in the House take the steps, and then when it's the Senate's turn, Harry Reid and a group of Democratic leadership refuse to let these things even get out of committee. Most of them never even get a vote on the floor. Why? Because then they would have to be on the record one way or another about if we're for it or if we're against it. They don't want to upset the party leadership. They have to toe the party line or they get treated like Joe Lieberman did. And most of them are scared to death that they can't do what Joe Lieberman did, which was get reelected as an independent. And, most of them have reason to fear that because a lot of them probably couldn't. So, in order to protect those members of the Senate, Harry says, we're not going to bother. And why bother? It's only the country. It's only our constitutional responsibility. It's only the public trust that we have been entrusted with. It's only the oath that we're supposed to honor. How much honor still exists in the modern world? I don't know about D.C., but I can tell you here in Tennessee, there's honorable people. And it doesn't matter if there's a D or an R after their name. If they tell you something, they typically mean it. There are also folks that are not quite so honorable. But I'll put faith in the majority of people I run into, whether I know them or not, here. I'll take them at their word until they give me a reason not to. There are places in the country, and I don't mean to be disrespectful to any of them because I'm sure there are fabulous and wonderful people in all of them. This is the United States of America, after all. The greatest nation on earth. If you disagree with that, then I'm sorry, but you're sadly mistaken. This is not even a matter of opinion. It's not open to debate. This is the greatest nation on earth. No other country has ever risen in such a short amount of time and developed such a high level of standard for the citizenship in the same amount of time. No place else. That's because of capitalism. That's because of free enterprise. That's because of freedom. Because of freedom of religion, freedom of speech, freedom of the press, especially back in the day when the press was actually acting like the watchdogs and stewards protecting the people from the naughty guys in power that get a little out of hand. What has happened to the mainstream media so that journalism is now taught as a protect the president 101 if there's a D after his name. Attack the president every time you get the chance if there's an R after his name. And never ever let there be a president that has an I after his name. Can't have it. We have a two-party system. And both parties are corrupted. It's time, ladies and gentlemen, that either the true conservatives take back the Republican Party or we form our own. Time for a new party? Well, there's dozens of parties out there already. In fact, I've told you before, I've given support and tend to lean a little more, tend to see myself as a libertarian more than a Republican. I know that there's a lot of other folks out there that do too. Again, there's a couple of the party platforms like the recreational use of drugs. There's not a limit on that as far as they're concerned. There are some drugs that are just too dangerous to just allow anybody to use because it's going to affect more than just them. And I do believe that it serves our national interest to have military operations taking place abroad as opposed to having to fight off every threat right here at the States. Now, should we be involved with as many things as we are? Obviously not. And also, when you have the kind of debts that our country has, there is no reasonable, rational excuse for doling out so much foreign aid. Bottom line is, we shouldn't be giving any foreign aid to any country that is not one of our closest allies. Period. And I know some people can make a legitimate argument against that. And I wouldn't argue with them too much. But the hypocrisy in D.C. has to come to an end. And the only way that's going to happen is with a united voice, all Americans, despite whether you're Christian or Hindu or Wiccan, whether you're left-leaning or right-leaning or somewhere in the middle, we've got to come together as Americans. We have to put responsible adults who are not career politicians in to do these jobs. That's tonight's show, ladies and gentlemen. Thank you and good night.